Hello, namaste. We are here today with my dear friend and soul sister, Dr. Leslie Carr, out of San Francisco. She is a clinical psychologist, and she's just come out with her new ebook, When Change Takes Time. And I'm so excited to have you with us. Thank you for joining us today, Leslie.
I'm so excited to be here with you. Thank you for having me, Ashley.
Yeah, this is a subject that I know we both feel so passionate about, really helping people and our clients create sustainable and tangible change in life. But the fact is, often it takes longer than what we think or what we want. It might be, and I think there's such a tendency right now, naturally in our culture, and with the super fast-paced technology and our left brains sort of on overdrive, that we get into some assumptions that there are quick fixes, or we have all these programs online, like 6-week programs to do this or that and heal your relationship, or lose weight. That's a really good example. I have a course that's 6 weeks online, but I know that by working with my own clients and myself especially, it takes a long time often, and it's a very consistent process to create tangible change. So just let's start by giving people a little idea about your book and how you came to write this book in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess to kick us off here, I wanted to write the book because I wanted to address exactly what it is that you're saying, right? It seems to me that there's so many tools for change out there. There are so many resources that people can go to if they're trying to work on something in particular. They can read books, they can work with therapists or life coaches. There's so many, they can go to workshops, so many resources that people have available to themselves. But the one thing that I sometimes have reservations about is this notion that exists in our culture that you should be able to do things quickly. I mean, to your point about weight loss being a good example, I admit that it's an example that I go to as well often, because I feel like there's so much messaging. A big part of why weight loss is hard for people is because they get engaged in this yo-yo of trying to lose weight really quickly, and then they're gaining it back because they're doing something in an unsustainable way. And I think that that often can be a metaphor for the stuff that we see that's a little bit more purely psychological, emotional, that kind of stuff. We get this message in our culture that we should be able to change overnight. And from my vantage point, I just think that it's very rarely possible. I mean, depending on what it is that you're working on, I suppose it's possible sometimes, but I think very rarely can we ever make lasting change quickly.
Right. And I think, it's interesting because I know you and I both do a lot of spiritual practice, and also are really entrenched in the deeper psychological, emotional work, especially doing shadow work and really, integrating whether it's repressed emotion or unprocessed, family of origin issues, some of those deeper issues that are really laying in our unconscious. And I think that's the piece that, when I hear a lot of, the 6 tips, or, this 5-week course, or 4, this and that. And I get a lot of requests for that, blog posts, give them 5 tips or 10 tips. And that's great. And it's very digestible and it's very manageable for people. And I get that in the nature of, time constraints, but ultimately to really create shifts, and again, in my perspective from working with clients, and even more so with myself, it's the consistent approach every single day, sitting down in meditation or journaling, or working in therapy myself for 20 years, that I've created this, that I've had this deeper self-inquiry. So for you, what do you suggest for people that, let's say, I'm thinking of clients right now that are really struggling in their marriage or in their relationship, or are really struggling with finding their purpose and making a big career shift. What would you recommend for people? How to start, where to go, what to do?
That's a really good question. There's something that you said that I just want to go back to really quickly, because I kind of think that you hit the nail on the head when you use the word unconscious. One of the things that I worry about sometimes with the messages that people get, generally speaking, about how to get change, create change, make change, is that we can't always see ourselves as clearly as we'd like. A lot of things are unconscious, and I think a lot of the times why change is difficult is because we we can't always see everything. And I think for
Yeah.
that reason, I'm a huge fan of having some kind of facilitator engaged in
Right.
your change, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a coach, somebody who can help you to see the things that we can't always see in ourselves.
Right.
But one thing that I tried to do in the books, you're sort of saying, what would I recommend that people do? It's hard for me to speak generally to that question. But one thing that I tried really hard to do in the book is to make it as individual and as personal for people as possible by doing things like creating journaling sections with really exploratory and somewhat deep and very personal questions. Because something that sometimes worries me a little bit too is that I feel like people get very general solutions,
Right.
right?
Definitely.
We all have such individual problems and we're all built in such unique ways. And then we get these incredibly generalized solutions for our problems. So I would actually say that depending on what somebody's struggling with, I think they kind of have to get underneath that, right? They have to figure out what resource is going to be best for them depending on what it is that they're struggling with. You might have to do a little research, right? To figure out what coach is going to be the best for you, what therapist is going to be the best for you, what book is going to be the right thing for you. It's all so personal.
That's such a great point. I love that. And there's two things. Number one, going back to the unconscious, what I say to my clients a lot when I have clients that are sitting in front of me saying, okay, what are we going to do now? Like, what's the solution? Give me some advice. What's my homework? And I typically do give people homework to go back and do certain, make certain behavioral shifts or journaling or whatever. It could be anything. But what I say is a quote from Carl Jung when he says, the thing about the unconscious is it's unconscious. It's like, it's such a radically simple notion, but the thing about the unconscious, it's unconscious. It's a shadow. You can't quite see it. And so we need help to see it. We need reflection from, trained professionals or very, dear and skillful friends that, and I know for myself, even when I'm getting that reflection of, hey, take a look at this, you need to own this piece of it or whatever. I'm still in so much resistance to even wanting to see that. Even if I have the role of the witness mind that's saying, yes, that's true. I know I'm playing this out. I know I have this core negative belief. And I'm still resisting wanting to take the action to rectify or sort of create that transformation.
Precisely. I think that's so well put. Exactly.
Yeah. And then the second piece on that is the fact that it's not one size fits all. There are so many different factors that are going into why we're experiencing what we're experiencing. What is your personality type? Maybe what's your astrological sign? What's your family of origin and the conditioning that you come from? All these different typologies that I find really helpful in narrowing down and getting a little bit more skillful and intricate and sophisticated in approaching solutions. Because for someone, yoga meditation might be great. For someone else, that's not going to work. Maybe they need, cognitive behavioral therapy, or maybe they need the tapping solution, or, whatever it might be, hypnosis. And so really doing some exploration personally into what doorways open for you.
Absolutely. I think that something that you're talking about right now really speaks to conversations that we've had in the past that I can't help but want to bring up in terms of, that whole piece of, the fact that it's unconscious it's unconscious, that sort of innate, the challenge that is innate to that, right? And I feel like a lot of messages that people often get are things like, oh, well, if you just think differently, you'll feel differently.
Right.
And I think one of the problems that I have with that message sometimes, it's not to say that it isn't true, right? A big part of cognitive behavioral therapy is the notion that if you think differently, you'll feel differently.
Or affirmations and mantras.
And that kind of stuff. But I think to your point, we already have all of these built-in internal mechanisms that are designed to make us hide from ourselves. And from my vantage point, you can't start to heal and you can't start to really change or do the work until you uncover what is hidden from you. And so I think just one piece, that I can't help but want to speak to because it seems so important to me is that a lot of the messages that we get are that we should actually do more of that as opposed to less. We should just use affirmations, we should manifest, we should sort of bury our feelings in some ways. And it's hard because it seems to me like our goal is to do the exact opposite of that in some ways. It's not to say there's never a place for affirmations and manifesting, but I think sometimes that can get really confusing, what to use when and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And I think what you're also, sort of circling around is that we have an emotional body, right? We have an emotional reality. We have feelings. And where is the place? And this is where I get a little of the sting, or it sort of grates on my nerves when I just hear these sort of blatant solutions that are pumped out, where it's like, where's the space for one to just feel? Where's the space for us to just be in our emotional body and experience that, and honor the process of what it is to do the deeper work of healing and transformation that by its very nature takes time. It takes time to heal emotions. It's an open wound, just like a scab or a broken bone. It takes time for our psyche and our soul and our emotional body to heal. And I believe in the principle of healing. That's our natural inclination. But how can we have, so much compassion and patience and allow ourselves that time and be in the process of it instead of trying to hurry through and get to the other side?
Exactly. I mean, I think that at the risk of sounding self-serving, I think that the conversation that we're having right now is a really important one. And I hope that the people out there who really need to hear this message are hearing it.
Yeah.
Because I don't know about you, but I think that, there are so many people that I really respect out there that mean so well, that have the best intentions, that are trying to help people and do help people all the time. But sometimes say things that people misinterpret or they misunderstand. Right. And then as a result, people are sometimes almost more hindered than they're helped. And I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but I get a lot of clients that are coming to me for the first time that are having a really hard time because they're having to unpack messages that they've gotten. So for example, I'll never forget one time when a young woman came to me for the first time and she was really, really suffering and really, really struggling. And one of the things that she said to me was, I know it's so bad. I shouldn't be thinking this way. I should be focusing on what's positive, and
right.
I should be using my affirmations and focusing on what's positive. Meanwhile, she'd been, terribly traumatized. She was struggling for really understandable reasons. She had overwhelming emotions for understandable reasons. And so much of the work that we've done together has been about unpacking that, sort of revealing what's there, being really courageous about witnessing, right? And so all I really want to emphasize for anyone who might be out there who's listening to this right now, who's sort of having the experience that I personally witness a lot of people having, where there's that light bulb that goes off, right? Okay, it's okay to have my feelings, or it's okay to be thinking about this thing that's really difficult, is that it's just that piece of things, right? That, you and I have so many people that we work with professionally that we have so much respect for, and they all mean really well, and these messages are well-intentioned, but it seems like they get confused somewhere along the way. Do you feel that? Do you see that?
I think what's really interesting in coming from, and I know you come from a similar orientation of depth psychology, which is a psychological approach that really honors the shadow, and it really honors the unconscious, and it honors the process of exploring the unconscious, that a lot of people out there, and this is one of the reasons that I chose to get a degree in psychology and go back and get a master's in psychology, was because I really wanted to understand the intricacies and the nature of psyche, instead of sort of just these, I don't want to say blind assumptions, but sort of this overlay or an oversimplification, really. And I think that there's a lot of people, and, I do coaching as well as psychotherapy and teaching yoga and meditation. There's many different doorways, but whether it's, yoga teachers or coaches, I mean, a lot of times people may not have the training to really understand the architecture of psyche. And
so well put.
Yeah, that's the way I look at it. Like, there's all these different systems and complexes and structures within our psyche, just like within our structural body, our physical skeletal body, we have that same sort of structural, architecture in our psyche. And so to really be able to understand and hold the space for all of those pieces to fit together and work together, and it can't really be oversimplified. And so I think that's a tendency just by the nature of our culture, and by the nature of technology, and everyone is so overwhelmed and overstimulated that they want sort of this quick nugget and this quick fix. And it's not, when you're talking about psyche, just like if you were talking about going into surgery or again, like healing a broken bone, like there's a lot of intricacies to what might, be needed for that process.
Yeah, I think that's so well put.
And there's a science behind it. It's not, I think people sort of have this, therapy has sort of been getting a bad rap of, you're just going to talk about your past experiences. It's not, if someone really understands psychotherapy, we're not just talking about our past experiences. We're not just rerunning, old scripts. We're actually exploring it, understanding it, holding the space. And there's a whole psychodynamic of what's happening in the relationship between a therapist and a client that is cultivating the healing itself.
Precisely. And one of the things that I talk about in the book, and the science behind this is it's very new and super, super interesting to me, is the fact that there's also evidence that we actually see structural changes in the brain as a result of therapy, right?
Exactly.
That when you actually have a healing experience in therapy, usually tends to happen more often when it's a long-term kind of thing.
Right.
Depth work, you actually see brain-based changes. So we're not just sitting around talking, to your point, precisely.
Right. With neuroplasticity and the mirror neurons and actually creating corrective experiences that have real profound changes and then result in the behavioral shifts.
Precisely. And I think just to go back to one thing that you said before that feels so important to emphasize is that, it really isn't, you said before about how there are all of these different tools or all of these different avenues, and I completely agree, and it is not my intention in any way, shape, or form to make it seem like I think that one thing is better than the other or something like that. But I think that you're right that therapy has gotten a bad rap. And some of the more depth-oriented practices have gotten a bad rap over time. And I wish that to the extent that I want there to be a seat for everybody at the table and room for all of this at the table, all I want, and I have a feeling you are of the same mind, is for things like therapy and depth work to also have a seat at the table.
Right.
For it to not be so dismissed anymore, right? There's a place for this. It's important. Yeah.
Correct. And I think it's that, I really look at it as like that division between left brain and right brain, where the left brain is very logical, linear, and we're very over identified with that in our culture right now due to the technological revolution of needing results. How much can I get for how little money and how little time, and versus the right brain of really honoring, ultimately what you're talking about is honoring the feminine, which is honoring the process, not just the results, but honoring the actual process itself, honoring emotions, honoring the messiness, honoring intuition, honoring, a more lengthy, sort of full-bodied and comprehensive approach that may not be as easy to digest for a lot of people. It's courageous and it requires so much compassion.
I think you're spot on, and I think it absolutely does take courage. Yeah. I completely agree with you.
Thank you so much. I mean, I could go on for hours, and we will collaborate much more in the future, but it's such an honor. And I just want to, again, highlight this book that's amazing. It's 72 pages. It's incredibly comprehensive and really cultivating the deeper work when change takes time. There's broken down into 4 parts and a lot of journaling and exercises and very applicable, practical tools for you guys. So the link is below. Please check it out. You can go to drlesliecarr.com and all that.
It's actually just lesliecarr.com.
Oh, just lesliecarr.com. Okay. Yeah. lesliecarr.com.
Thank you so much, though, Ashley. It's really been great to be here.
Such an honor. Such an honor. Thank you for your incredible work in the world.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for yours as well.
Yeah. Take care.
You too. Bye.